those of you who waited. We are starting now, and we had our little networking ahead of time today. So I was introducing Kristina, and she really has made amazing content, and she's done it in such a way that Insperity ranks for amazing things. We're going to talk about that on Google, and they have huge followings in their social channels, really stuff that I think any business would be really excited to have. So I want to get her secrets today. I'm going to get in her brain. We're going to pull them all out. We're going to learn how to do it, right? And then next to her is Nguyen, and she attends Social Media Breakfast Office, so she's a familiar face, but she specializes in working with B2B companies and organizations to help them put together social media and marketing and communication strategies. And one of the things she does, and I actually forgot to ask you this, but she does a mobile chat on Twitter. What day do you do that? Wednesday. Do you want to hand her that? Tell us about that.
So mobile chat is a Twitter chat about anything and everything having to do with mobile development, mobile apps, mobile marketing. It's on Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 8 p.m. Houston time.
So they talk about mobile. So there's a lot of really superstar talent sitting here today, and I'm really excited to share what they know with you. So I'm going to start with the lowball question I just wanted to ask you is what does Insperity do, and why are you so successful at that? But what do you guys do? Tell us.
Okay, so Insperity is it's an HR outsourcing company. So we basically serve as an offsite HR department for small to medium-sized businesses. We also offer some a la carte kind of back office software and services for every need you could imagine in your HR need for HR. So so that's in a nutshell what we do. It's pretty complicated business.
Right. So if I had a business, I was talking to her about this, and it was growing, and I was starting to get to mid-size, or I would come to Insperity to help me run the HR part of my office eventually.
Correct. Yeah. Cool. I mean, the core business that we have is a PEO service, and that's a professional employment organization. And what that is basically you join Insperity's PEO and we become your HR department. So it's for those companies that need help in HR, but they don't want to hire an entire HR department. They may not be of that size yet.
So tell us what kind of
That's okay. I work with mid-sized B2B companies. Typically, they have a need for a person like myself because they may not have an in-house marketing person, or they have an in-house marketing person who needs some extra help on the social media side. As Cammie mentioned earlier, she gets questioned quite often, how does that work for B2B? And that's typically the challenges that I have when I'm working with B2B organizations, and that's why I love it, because it does work.
Yeah, so I want to get into that a little bit. What do you tell a client when they ask you, how do I make this social media thing work for B2B? What's the ROI? Tell me how, I'm going to put all this money into it. What's going to come out of it? My people aren't on the internet. They don't even use Facebook. I'm sorry. Is that too many questions?
No. Were you listening in on my last conversation with a prospective client? No, these are all great questions. And yes, the questions are always, well, how does Facebook work for me? How does Twitter work for me? But you know what? At the end of the day, behind that logo and behind that company that you are selling to are other human beings, are other people. So as Brian Kramer says, it's human to human. So it's not really B2B or B2C. So if you think about that person that you are selling to, because they're still buying your product or your solution for their company, but they still have these challenges that they need to face as well. And if you are able to address their pain points and their challenges and give them information that is valuable to them via social media, that's how it works.
And I actually want to ask you that, Kristina, because I think that you actually do a really great job of finding those pain points. How do you find their pain points and speak to them? Because your content is it all about you? Is it all about Insperity and what you guys do?
No, absolutely not. Actually, one of my main goals is to create content that is educational first and foremost. And it provides helpful advice, helpful actionable tactics for the other person on the other side, the business owner, the HR director, the CFO, all of that. So we start by really understanding our audience. We've done a lot of work on building personas and really understanding where our target audience is, what their challenges are. We've done that through a lot of research, through talking to our salespeople, talking to our service people, and just asking them, what is driving the prospects to our business? Why are they coming to us? And from there, we just kind of build our content around those issues.
Right, and I thought that was really interesting because you don't just rely on your intuition and like finding out what those pain points are. You're talking directly to people inside the business who are talking to the customer on a day-to-day basis. How do you get them to cooperate with you?
It's been a long road. I'm gonna say, it's not something that just started and was super smooth. We really had to get their buy-in. But the way we got their buy-in was to show them the great content that we were producing from what they were telling us, and to show them that, it is making a difference. So, our goals with our content is, to drive traffic to our website. We have 60% of the traffic to our website comes through our blog. So that is our main goal with our content. And so because we track everything, we're able to show those subject matter experts that what they're doing and contributing to is truly making a difference in our business.
I think that's really great what you're saying. And you use, tell us what you use on the back end to kind of measure that. Could you talk a little bit about the measurement piece of that for a minute?
Sure. We use a lot of Google Analytics. We put UTM parameters on every URL that we share.
Don't worry, guys. We'll talk about that, what that means.
Yeah.
Hold on.
UTM parameters and PIDs, which I can, we can talk about that too. But every link that we share has some sort of tag on it that we can track. And we constantly are measuring that, and we're sharing those analytics across not only our team, our marketing team, but also with our subject matter experts.
Right, and let's go back to UTM. I'm not going to go past these things. What they call UTM parameters in your marketing. Let me just see the hands. Okay, good. So I'm not going to be preaching to the choir, I can tell most people. Those of you who do, somebody go out on the internet for me and find the Google page where you can make those and tweet it to the rest of the crowd. But there is a page that you can go to that Google has that allows you to take your link and then you set some parameters on it, like what medium is it in? Twitter, or blog, or newsletter, or whatever you're sending that message out on. And then it lets you tell, like a campaign. So you can say, hey, we're doing the fall campaign about, how to get your, I don't know what you guys would do, but how to get your HR house in order or something like that. So that'd be your fall campaign. So that would be that's everything, Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus if you still use it, and all those things. And then you would hit search or hit whatever, go, and it gives you this really long link, and I'm sure you've seen them online. You see these links, and then there's a question mark, and then there's all these numbers and letters, and that's the UTM parameter. The cool thing about that parameter is that Google Analytics knows what it means, and you can actually pull all that together and see exactly how many people came through that link to your website. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And I know that in Google Analytics they have the social area, and that's awesome. But it only breaks it down by who came from Twitter, who came from Facebook, but it doesn't tell you exactly what your efforts brought in necessarily. So that's a pretty helpful, the UTM parameter. And you can shorten those big ugly links with bit.ly or something like that, and those UTMs still stay underneath the bit.ly link. So I'm sorry, I just had to do a technical discussion before we moved on.
Thank you, because I wouldn't have been so eloquent with that.
So that being said, that's how you are doing it. You're measuring and showing the people. I want to talk to Ann too about that, because you talk to a lot of other groups, and Kristina's done a great job of getting her team on board, but you're coming into companies on a regular basis. What other pitfalls do you see? How to get content and get people interested in using social media?
Sure. So the pitfalls I've seen are usually they think it's a huge investment in time. Usually I have to tap into the subject matter experts within the companies to help write the blog post, because I may not be the subject matter expert on that solution that they sell. So oftentimes it's time consuming, and time constraint is a challenge. Analytics, definitely, because oftentimes it's a matter of educating how to analyze that and collect the data and know where people are coming to your site from. UTM parameters are a great tool to use, Google Analytics. I use Sprout Social for management, so it does show me when the links are clicked on and how many clicks and where it's going. There are other software platforms that show who visits your website and what page they go to. And I use that again as well to figure out what content are people really looking for and what they're reading. And use that as kind of evergreen content to repurpose, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, right?
Yes, we really actually are. Thank you for bringing that little preview up. So we're going to do that. Speaking of that, getting the time commitment. I want to kind of move into the time commitment because, Kristina, you spend all of your job on that right now, but I don't think it started that way. Could you talk about how this kind of evolved, where this came from, and sort of how you ended up this amazing that you are? Because, lots of people out here could do this, but it takes a little bit of investment time. So could you talk about your journey a little bit?
Sure. I think, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they try to do everything. And so we've really worked on trying to isolate the things that we do really well and just stick with those. And so really my position started as we were just blogging. Our company really didn't have any interest in social media at all. Even the blog was very they were a little scared of it. They're like, oh, we're giving away free information. Why would we give away our trade secrets for free? So we really had to do a lot of talking with the stakeholders and explain to them that we're not giving everything away. We're just giving enough away to pique interest, to build trust, to establish those relationships with our prospects so that we're top of mind, so that we become that thought leader and they keep coming back to us. So once we did that, once we kind of got that buy-in, which I'm telling you, we had multiple conversations. This is not something that happened through one conversation. Once we got that buy-in and the blog started being real successful just through organic search, then we said, hey, look at what this is doing. And if we promoted this content, if we went onto social and we started sharing it, we could, multiply this tenfold. And so they're like, yeah, okay, let's give it a try. So we started on LinkedIn was our first channel because we felt like business to business, and that's what our primary target audience is. So we started there. We knew that that's where our target audience was. And that was really successful. And so then we said, okay, well, let's try Twitter. So we just did one at a time and we got really good at one thing and then we moved on to something else. We didn't try to do it all at once.
I really love that you say that because I do believe that can be part of what happens is if you overcommit to this huge program, you kind of have to crawl before you walk, before you run, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's something, I think we also talk ourselves out of doing something because of that sometimes. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think we think that, oh, well, why do it because it's just one channel? Why should I spend it? But that one channel, you get really good at that channel and you use those strategies on the next channel or you modify them and you test what works better on. And you just slowly build and then you get to a point where we have, where our primary channels are Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, a little bit of Google+, but we have 44,000 followers on Twitter. And that's just been slow growth over 3 years.
And that's amazing. And that's really by just providing amazing content, a little advertising, and having a very good strategy. We'll talk about the strategy here in a minute. And I kind of want you to fill in here because this is a great story about how this happened for Insperity. But, am I saying that right? Okay, good. And I want to know, for your clients, do you see a similar kind of progression whenever they do something like this? Explain.
Yes, absolutely, a similar progression. One of the things I always say is that just because the platform is there doesn't mean that you have to be on it because they feel like, oh my God, there's Facebook, there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, there's Pinterest. I have to be on everything, everywhere. No, you do not. Where is your audience? And just like Insperity started off with LinkedIn, LinkedIn is very important for a B2B organization. We have found that Twitter has also been very successful. I get that often too, like, how is Twitter successful for B2B? But it is. And then Facebook, I think for many of my clients, we use it as a brand awareness channel still, but we don't get a lot of traction on Facebook. And I don't know if you find the same for Insperity, but LinkedIn and Twitter are really important channels for the B2B clients that I work with. And then there's some that have found some success with others like Pinterest because it's a curation platform. But again, it's where is your audience, know your audience, where are they, and then that's where you start off with so that you don't overwhelm yourself.
That's great. And let's talk a little bit about that too. I mean, I like that you're saying that you're not getting a lot of traction off Facebook. I know some people could though. So it depends. And also it depends on your advertising budget just a little bit because Facebook is sort of relying on that. You can do really well with $5 to $10 a month. And if you're trying to reach like one-off, like if you're trying to reach marketers and try to sell them a course, that's different than if you're trying to reach somebody to buy an HR solution, which I think is a completely different thing. But if you're trying to reach potential employees, Facebook could be. So I mean, maybe you have different content strategies for each platform.
Absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely, because I was thinking that as you were speaking. So yes, one of the big no-nos I always again preach is that not to share the exact same content on every single platform. While you're going to have crossover audiences on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, there are going to be a lot of people who are not the same audience. And so again, know your audience that you've got on each platform and what they want and share that particular content for that segment.
That's great. Now I do want to talk to you a little bit about that because you do create a ton of content. So does this mean that you have to have a different kind of content for every single platform? Like, are you just recreating the wheel every time that you're going to, like, so if you go to Twitter, okay, today on Twitter we're going to talk about this, and over here we're going to talk about that, and kind of, can you explain your strategy for content, sort of how you spin it out?
Sure. One of the things that we've found really successful for our content strategy is to, we create what we call cornerstone pieces. And what it is I kind of call it my hub of information. So I find some real critical topic for our target audience, and I create an ebook about it. And it's a very in-depth, extensive look at this topic. And then from there, I take that information and I kind of pull pieces out, and I've created an infographic, I've created a blog post, I've created a checklist. So I'm not necessarily having to recreate content all the time. I'm just pulling from this kind of hub of content. And I pull out quotes. We've done things where we've pulled out just, really powerful quotes from this content, and we put them into an image and we share them on Twitter because, images are great and much more successful. So it's just learning how to collect that key information and then repurpose it in multiple ways.
And I want to talk a little bit about what a content hub is and what it can be. So we're talking about things like white papers, or can you kind of explain what these things can be, a big video or whatever?
Sure. I see sort of this cornerstone piece or content hub as a very in-depth look at a critical pain point for your target audience. So for instance, like I told you, we're part of the PEO industry, so professional employment organization. A lot of people don't even know what that is. A lot of companies don't know what that is. So we've created this step-by-step guide to PEOs, and it basically covers everything you could ever want or need to know about a PEO and the PEO industry, how it works in your business. And it's a very in-depth look. It talks to you about how to choose one and how to decide whether it's right for your business. It's just very comprehensive. And from there, that's where we've kind of pulled out pieces and created other content.
Yeah, that's great. So Anne, do you do similar kinds of things with your clients? Can you tell me how you repurpose, reuse? How do you get the content? How do you get it?
Absolutely, yes. Very similar to what Kristina does with Insperity. we take, there's always going to be evergreen content. I always like using that term. But I typically advise my clients, think about the questions that you normally get from your prospective clients for your industry, just like Insperity, what's a PEO? So in talking to their own clients, they're always going to have these same types of questions. So that's great content to write about, share, tips, 5 top points for doing such and such. And again, being able to repurpose that, because those are questions that their clients are always going to ask about that specific industry or that specific solution.
Yeah, and you can get months and months and months of content out of these content hubs. I mean, it's really crazy. Could you, I didn't ask you this at the beginning, but could you tell the audience just sort of the types of industries you're working with?
Sure. I've worked with software companies. I've worked with trade show companies. Who else have I worked with? Other kind of business organizations that reach out to business companies or professional companies to be members. And so that's the software world.
That's what you like. Okay, good. No, but I'm just saying, we've got HR, we've got like software, we've got, and do you hear how the strategies are similar across all these different places? Actually, I was just, and I think I tweeted it out, or it will tweet out soon, but there's a woman, her name is Shalene Johnson, and I will tweet it out again here just to make sure I did it during this period of time. But she came up with this really great idea where you take a 15-minute video, you sit somebody down, you get 5 or 6 points. So that's a really good way to use SMEs, right, in your company's subject matter experts, that those would sit down, and if they don't want to write a blog post or they don't want to write a big white paper, can you just use video to capture what they're going to say? Do you ever do that?
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that has been a solution that I've used in the past, because yes, the SME may not have the time to do it, but they will certainly be able to sit down with you for 5 or 10 minutes and do a video, and then they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I've just spent a huge chunk of my day to push out content.
And you're working on something like that right now for the Microsoft Women's Innovation Conference, right? That's coming up next month, right?
Yes.
So how you kind of talk about how you're doing the content strategy for that?
Sure. So the Microsoft Women in Innovation event, as Cami mentioned, and Cami is also one of the speakers.
Thank you.
So,
yeah.
That's
the only reason I know about the content strategy, because she's going to videotape me after this thing. Anyway,
so it's next month, October 6th. But yeah, so what we're going to do, because it's a new event to the market, and we're trying to build up the community, we are going to do Facebook Live feeds and streams of the speakers, and Cami gets to be my first one.
I'm the first victim.
And it's really a way to, again, get a feel for what the speaker is going to be talking about, what the event is about, and really draw in the community to the social media profiles and, make the awareness of the event, hopefully, much more.
And so even, do you have to be like really amazing? Does your SME have to be like on Facebook to do this?
No.
So how are you managing that?
They don't. So I have, like with you, we're here, so we're gonna do a Facebook Live feed. But for the ones that are not in town, what we've done is we've asked each of them the same question about growth hacking, and so they'll answer it. And what we'll do is create a quote, do a graphic, and then share that via social media. And so again, another way to share that same type of information that the speakers are doing via video, but easily shared with, just because they're remote and I don't have access to them unless they'd love to fly me to California. I'm happy to do that.
It's probably not in the budget.
No, probably not.
Anyway, but my point is that you can be really creative with how you get this content, right? You can grab people. She's going to be trumping all over town next week, sitting down with each of these people that are maybe not even on Facebook. Do you know what I'm saying? That they're going to talk about what they love. And so for the crowd that she's trying to reach, which is basically women, actually it's you guys really, yes, but women and men can come too, but it's the idea of how do you hack and kind of change and growth hack your businesses, your boss, growth hack your boss, and get things moving in a direction where you don't have to like do it just the plain old way, to be innovative and creative in the way you think. And I think for B2B content marketing, that is huge. It's huge to be able to just think creatively and outside of the box, because it can be really boring otherwise, I would say.
Yes, sometimes the content can be boring. Sometimes software can be very technical and very boring. But we as we mentioned earlier, social media content isn't about broadcasting all the time, isn't about talking about yourself and your product all the time. It's sharing information and content that would be valuable to your buyer. I had a great example that came across on LinkedIn recently. Windstream Communications. I don't know if you all are familiar with them. They're a networking internet provider for mid-size and small businesses. They shared this great blog that they wrote about social media tips for small businesses. Was that the business they're in? No. But that was important to their customers. And so guess what? That gives me a really warm fuzzy if I'm their customer, because they care about me enough to share content that has nothing to do with what they sell.
Right, and so they trust you. That's
Absolutely.
really the bottom line in the end, is they trust you and that you give something valuable to them so that they look to you to be the expert. So I think that's what happens with you. Could you talk a little bit about how beyond these content hubs you choose these kinds of content and how people react to it?
Yeah, so we choose the content. Like I said before, we have a connection with our SMEs, our subject matter experts, which are our service and sales people. But we do a lot of research and just watch what's trending in the news, and we think about what would our company say about this topic? Like, what would we advise our clients to do on this topic? And then we generate a piece of content from that a lot of the time. So it's not it's just finding that unique spin. I mean, it could be this topic that everybody's talking about, but if you find that unique spin, then you're not just adding to the noise, you're actually adding value for the prospect.
I just love what you just said, and I want to back up to make sure that we didn't miss it, which is this idea that you're going to add value to the conversation rather than just report. So like, instead of reporting the news, you're adding your spin on the news and what you would think about it and what you would advise your clients. That's really interesting, because that automatically, you're adding to the conversation, if you will, to use these buzzwords for social media. You're adding to a conversation and you're building a community that way.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah. So we take, there's for us, a lot of times it's talk about boring. It's, employment law issues. For instance, the new overtime law, white collar overtime law. So we think, how would we tell our clients to prepare for this? So we're not just reporting that, hey, there's a new law, but we're saying there's a new law, this is how you need to get ready. So we're providing that value, that actionable information to our prospects.
That's great. And there's some great places out there, by the way, where you can find, if you don't have a great sales department that's telling you what the questions are, go to Quora and see, type in your industry name and see what people what kind of questions they're asking about your industry or your niche. I mean, that's a really cool place to find lots of questions. So find questions and answer them, I think, is such a great piece of advice, because that gives you endless content forever. Yeah. So how are you guys getting yours? You said you're using video, but how are you getting that information out, and how are you spending all that once you get it?
The content that we share. So absolutely. So again, social media channels, blogging is definitely very important for the clients as well, and my clients, and sharing that value and adding the value to the conversation, as we've all mentioned, and really sharing via Twitter, LinkedIn. But one of the things that we'll do, or I'll try to do for sure, is that I read every piece of content that I share. I read it. I do not simply just retweet, because I want to make a valuable contribution to the conversation, as we said. So I will add our own little spin to content that I share. It's not simply just, I'll admit sometimes, yes, I hit tweet and go away after I've read it, but that's where you can really add more value to the conversation.
And tools like Buffer, I'm thinking about free, and there's Sprout Social, which is awesome, but it's, it can be pricey for some places. If you have Buffer, when you pull it up, it gives you places to change the message for Facebook versus Twitter and LinkedIn. And also when you retweet, that retweet with comment is awesome, because always retweet with a comment. If you can help it, always retweet with a comment, because you add your little spin, and that's what people actually are interested in, is how you think about it. So that's really, I think, a very critical piece of that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of coming down to question and answer time. Is there any questions that you have about the social media that you've kind of struggled with or have issues with? Yeah, Trish? And that's what, yeah, how do you take that and package?
So I think it really, you have to, I think, understand what your audience wants to. I mean, some audiences are more willing to read longer things. Some audiences want lists. We deal with a lot of busy business people, and they don't have time to necessarily read the whole, big old ebook. Some of them like it. Some of them. We find that lists, bullets. I try not to have big blocks of content when I'm blogging. Anything that our most successful things have been like ask, and we'll just list a bunch of, one of our most successful blog posts is like 16 questions every person should ask when interviewing an applicant. And it's just literally a list of questions. And that has been driven the most traffic to our website for the last year. So
like resource guides, really, like quick resource guides.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. Those as lead magnets too. We haven't talked at all about email, but is email still important?
Email? Yes, email is still important. It is another way to get your messaging out there. We don't inundate our prospects and our clients with email typically because it does get old. But if there's a quarterly newsletter to send out or to follow up with, my clients do a lot of trade shows, so there's usually a prospect list that we need to follow up with. And so for those lists, that email is very valuable. But really, it's more of a hey, here's what's going on with us. Here's some other valuable information about the industry that you may be interested in, that will drive them back to the website, of course.
Yeah, and do you guys use email still?
Yeah, we do a lot of email, actually. We have a blog newsletter that goes out to subscribers, so you can subscribe to our blog, and every time we publish a new post, the email goes out. And we have a lead nurturing campaign. So when somebody downloads an ebook from our website, they automatically get dropped into a lead nurturing campaign. So they'll every 4 days receive an email that with a new piece of content that was relevant to the content that they downloaded. And eventually, we try to use that content in those emails to drive them through the sales funnel and to get them from top of funnel, maybe where they're just kind of interested in an idea, to a sort of a mid-funnel area where they're starting to say, okay, well, maybe Insperity does have a service that could help me with this problem that I originally came to them for. And so those emails, they're providing good information, but they're also connecting the problem and solution that Insperity provides.
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, what I love about what you just said is that you don't just, put them in a lead nurturing program and say, bye, bye, bye. You put them in a lead nurturing program, and then you say, and here's something else that could be helpful. And how about this? And what about that? And they're like, wow, these people are really smart and helpful.
Yeah, it's all about educating your audience. And when you educate your audience, that just builds an enormous amount of trust. And so when they are ready to make that purchase, whether it's today or in 30 days, they have that relationship with you, and they're more willing to work with you than just a cold lead.
Yeah, and I do. I mean, I think email is important too. We're a social media breakfast, but how many are here or on the email list? Oh, we need to fix that. So, so you can actually get on the email list by texting SMBHOU to 44222, and you will automatically be added to the email list. It'll send you a little text that says to give us your email address, and then I will remind you these are coming up, and you'll know what they are ahead of time so that you can do it. How many get a Facebook notice for me? Yeah, so I know you can be my friend, and I'll send you Facebook notices. That's the other way to do it. So Cami Chat, facebook.com/Cami Chat. So that being important, do you guys actually measure how many people come through those leads and become like? Do you talk a little bit about the actual sales piece? Do you measure that and connect it to social media?
We measure everything.
So tell us how effective is your social media program? Dollars and cents.
Well, we measure what our goal is for social media is to promote our content. That is, and like I said, drive traffic to the website and generate our pipeline of leads, prospects. So we not only want to drive them to the website, but we want them to sign up for some sort of email of some sort, whether it's the blog, subscribe, or it's downloading a guide. So we track, like I said, we had the UTM parameters. So we have the PIDs, and so we can see.
We didn't talk about PIDs.
You're probably more eloquent than I am, but basically it follows once the user clicks on a URL with a PID in it, it follows them around, and you can pull the information as far as where they went on your site, how many pages they viewed, the time they spent on your site, where they left, where they came back, that kind of a thing.
So it shows their fun. It shows them. It's almost like think of it like a cookie.
Cookie, yeah. So we track everything. We track where they came from, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We track what blog posts they came in on, and if they went to the blog and then to download an ebook, and if they're in a nurturing campaign, and that way we can. And then in the nurturing campaign, we track what emails they've opened or clicked through on. We really track click-through more than we do open these days because of the email platforms allowing you to mark things as open, and that open rate's not so effective anymore. But we track click-through, and then we track conversion. So for us, a conversion is they filled out a form on our website, or they called or they emailed our sales team from an email. So we can because we track all of that, we can see the whole journey of the prospect or the lead that comes in.
That's great. So you have multi-touch attribution. That's great. So you can say how valuable one client is. So you know what their lifetime value is. Do you guys do lifetime value or?
I'm not sure we do lifetime value, but
that's one way you can do it too.
Yeah, we do. For us, our business is measured by our revenue is generated by the number of employees a company has.
Okay.
So we can see when we have conversion and make a sale, we say, we had 30 employees from this person, from this campaign that came in, or,
Glad we said that, because every single business obviously has a different measurement that the sales team, that the boss measures, not like what you measure, like, oh, look how many people liked us this week, which is awesome. And it's wonderful to come back and say you have how many likes on, how many followers on Twitter right now?
44,000.
Okay, it's awesome to say that you have 44,000 followers on Twitter to your boss, and they're like, whoa. But at the end of the day, if you can come and say, we brought in for you this many employees to our program, he's like, wow, you just paid your salary for the year.
Absolutely.
Very different conversation. I mean, he'll be wowed by those numbers, but he'll be more wowed by the financial numbers. I always say measure over your boss's head. If they're not measuring like that, you need to be. Do your clients measure, how do they measure your success at this point?
Yes, so most of my clients are going to be smaller. They're not on the enterprise level as Insperity, so there's challenges of making sure that things are integrated into CRM and being able to measure or educating often the sales department on how to measure those conversions. But yeah, at the end of the day, the conversions are still what lead to sales and what's important. And so it just varies. Some of them measure it by revenue. I don't really work with anybody that's measured it by number of employees, but typically the revenue that their sales bring in, that's a great way to tie it back to it. And so for me personally, it's still a lot of educating the clients on how to measure that.
And educating your bosses and other people. It's part of the process, right?
Yes.
So we started with ROI. I think we're going to end with ROI unless there's like a burning question out there. Is there? Is there? I know we're getting close to the oh yes, burning question. Oh, legal. Oh, really? We almost got out of here without that question. Oh
Legal.
my gosh. Legal.
Well, in our world, I don't really have a whole lot of legal issues like HR does. So
yeah,
that
HR is
may be
big,
more of a
and we work
question
with
for
we
you.
work with hospitals, so we do that too.
Well, I don't think we get over the hurdle slowly. We try not to provide legal advice per se. So when we provide, the content that we provide is more, it's not like you need to, fill out this form or do that. It's more of like you could contact this person, or you could giving them resources versus actually providing legal advice. Yes.
How do you work with your legal team?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
We just have to go back and forth with them sometimes. Honestly, I don't think there's any perfect formula for it. Unfortunately, I think over time they've seen that it's not as threatening. We've been doing this for 3 years now, and so I think initially they were much more stringent about what we were allowed to say. But over time they see that there hasn't been a whole lot of problems, and so they've kind of let the reins a little looser. But it was, I feel like with the legal department, my best success, and I don't know if you can do this, but is just try to build a relationship with them as best as you can. And, just keep reiterating to them that you're doing this to benefit the business. And so I did a lot of face-to-face meetings with them when I could. I shared with them the success that we were having. I felt that really helped when they saw what the actual business that it was driving.
And I think that's a really important point you're making, because the other part is when you work with legal, often what works really well is to get ahead of time, get a red flag topic list, and then that if you're talking about these things, you have to work with them. But if you're talking about other things that are outside of those parameters, they agree, oh yeah, you don't need to talk to us unless they hit these core areas. And then over time, you also can develop standard answers and standard text and standard language that they see and you see, and that works really well too for us, I think.
Right, yeah, we've done the red flag topic list. Like, that was really huge when we went to them and we said, okay, like, we can't have you reviewing every piece of content because we'll never get anything out there. And I said, so what puts us at most risk? What topics put us at most risk? And I actually let them propose them because I felt like then they felt more comfortable with the relationship. And they did. They told us anything that talks about employee benefits, employment law, compensation, any of those topics, you need to come to us. So then when I was building my calendar, I knew that if I wrote on those topics, they had to go through legal. I was going to have a long legal process probably with those. So I may do one of those topics a month and then 4 other topics that didn't have to go to legal a month, so that I kept my content flowing.
The whole process for you. That's
right.
That's excellent. That's a great tip. That's like a money tip, and we're going to end there because it's a money tip. Thank you guys so much for coming. Let's give these ladies a hand and thank them so much for sharing how they do their stuff. I'm pretty sure we didn't get all the knowledge out of your head, but if you guys want to come talk to them afterwards, that's great. I also want to give a very quick moment for jobs. Does anybody have any that they want to talk about or give? Yeah. And hi, guys in the audience out there. Thank you guys for being so patient with us today. Take care. Good.